on the timer. Okay, so hi everyone. That was a very warm and professional introduction, probably more than we could have done. But yeah, we're here today to talk to you about neurodivergence and how to navigate it while working in the games industry or getting there. And the clicker stops doing the clicking thing. There we go. Roughly, we will talk about first just understanding neurodivergence. What is it as a big picture? Then we'll talk about while you're working in games or starting your career, what are some of the challenges and strengths you can deal with and utilize. We talk about how to thrive and connect, and also how to hopefully avoid burnout, because that's often a big topic for neurodivergent people. And we just got an introduction, so I'll keep mine short. This is us. I'm Susie. I go by she or they pronouns. Both are fine. And yeah, I work as an ADHD coach, but before that, I worked in the games industry for 10 years or so, which seems like a long time. And I really am passionate about helping people and the games industry to, thrive and be inclusive for neurodivergent people. And I'll hand over to Errol.
Thank you. I'm Errol, as introduced. I'm a games writer and narrative designer at Jagex, and I'm also part of the DEI committee there and at the Writers Guild of Great Britain. So also very big on accessibility. And we will kick things, it worked. We're going to kick things off by talking about what neurodivergence actually is. So neurodivergent is a compound word, technical term. It comes from neurological, which is anything to do with our big, beautiful brains, and divergent, which describes the differences in how we experience the world. And that can include things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Tourette's, OCD, and many, many more. So we'll move on briefly. And as I've just said, like a lot of those things can be quite disabling, but being neurodivergent does not mean that you cannot go on to do fantastic things. Here we have a selection of celebrities who I could definitely name if you asked me. And one thing they all do have in common is that they are neurodivergent too. So we'll kick things off with a little bit of audience participation. I'd like you to raise your hand if you identify as neurodivergent. Okay, so quite a lot of us. Oh, and me, obviously. And how many of us, keep your hands up, got you there, if you are formally diagnosed? Okay, and the reason we're asking that is not to be horrible gatekeepers, I promise. It's because the tips we're going to give you today can apply to you whether you're diagnosed or not. And they can even apply to the few of you who are not neurodivergent. There's many tips in here about how to help people in your life. And we're here at the Games Festival specifically because there's a disproportionate number of neurodiverse people in this industry, and the numbers are only going up as pathways to diagnosis become smoother. Hand you over.
Yeah, so if you want to work in the games industry and you are neurodivergent, you're already in a good place to start. One of the challenges, however, is as you go into the industry, you might still be hesitant to disclose whether you're neurodivergent or not. And we just wanted to share that you're not going to be alone with this. Actually, 83% of people, even though there's such big numbers, still felt uncomfortable disclosing their status to their employers. And we'll talk to some of the reasons why that is and how you can gain a bit more confidence with this. So what we often get as questions when we have discussions in the industry is, when should you tell your employer that you are neurodivergent, or should you do it at all? So I just wanted to add in this slide to answer the question from where I stand. There are several paths you can go down, and there's no right or wrong one. The first important thing to know is you don't have to disclose your neurodivergence to an employer or anyone you don't want to, ever. There's nothing that forces you to do it, and you should make that choice yourself based on your comfort levels. You can choose to disclose it when you're applying. Some people do that if they want to have some reasonable accommodations, maybe in the application process. If you want to say, for example, I have ADHD, and for me it's easier to remember the information that I need if I can write it down. Is that okay? So it can be helpful to do it while applying. But if you're not sure whether that's going to be to your disadvantage, you can also just wait until you have started your job. So some people want to get the job first without mentioning it, maybe get a few months in, getting a good sense of their team, their manager, the work culture, and then share. And you don't even have to be explicit. You can just say, here's some things that I work best when I have this level of support. You don't even have to say, I have ADHD or autism or dyslexia if you don't feel comfortable with that. So disclose as much as you want as soon as you feel safe, is my general advice. And the last thing, again, just to say, you can also just never tell them if you don't want to, because maybe you don't trust them to be fully accepting, or you think if this person has a strong bias against this potentially, there's nothing that forces you to do it, but you can if you want accommodations.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is career choices and challenges. Building on your strengths is really important, but so is learning to anticipate and navigate challenges you might come across in the workplace. So, as I said before, neurodiversity is a disability, but as a neurodivergent person, you also have a surprising number of strengths. For example, you might have a highly focused interest in something, which makes you an expert on that topic, and you can go on to share that knowledge with others in the workplace or beyond. Or on the other hand, you might be the kind of person who swaps between having many different skills and hobbies, which makes you a jack of all trades. So yeah, take some time to think about what your strengths are and how you could apply them to the world of work. A lot of these strengths are mechanisms we develop to compensate for the things we struggle with the most. So this is a tweet from Danny Donovan, who does some fantastic ADHD-themed comics. Getting diagnosed with ADHD as an adult feels like being told you suck at Mario Kart your whole life, and then finding out your game generates 40 times more banana peels than it's supposed to. Incidentally, is anyone playing Mario Kart outside? It is great. But that genuinely is how it feels when you receive a late-stage diagnosis in your adult life. You realize that you've been working very hard to develop a set of skills to compensate for your perceived weaknesses, whereas perhaps some of the other people around you have not. And it's easy to fall into a pattern of kind of mourning that time we've spent working on that. But the truth is that that's a huge strength that we have as neurodivergent people. So moving on to how we feel about working in the workplace. This is a report from Neurodiversity in Tech, and we can see that the pink folks who are neurodivergent struggle. These are some of the things they struggle with the most compared to their neurotypical peers who are in purple. And the key takeaway here is that everybody struggles with certain things in the workplace, but neurodivergent people struggle with them significantly more. I'm going to pass you on to Susie, who's going to address how we tackle some of these challenges.
Yeah, thank you. So we're just going to, rather than making it specific to one neurotype and just picking it out, we're going to talk about things that can be experienced by people across ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, rather than labeling it, because sometimes you might also have several things going on, and indiscriminately we're going through them. One that I found really helpful to understand is sensory overload and sensitivity is a big thing for neurodivergent people. A lot of us are towards some sensory things like smell or noise or temperature or touch or light more sensitive than others. So sometimes it might just overwhelm us more quickly. What I also found interesting to find sometimes we're also seeking specific types of warmth or smell or taste, and it actually helps us be calm. So what I find really helpful as a neurodivergent person is A, having an awareness of this, and B, having an awareness of your own profile of sensory things. For me, if there's lots of bright lights that are shining in my face, like right now, after a while I will get anxiety and I won't even know why, and figuring out it's the lights really helped me. And it might also affect people differently. So if you notice someone else really struggling, it can really help to have that understanding. Because for us we can't really filter out other stuff. And I have a good video to showcase that someone made, what their experience is like as someone with autism who struggles with sensory, like sound inputs, and what it is like. And I found that a very helpful tool to do that. But before we do that, also just think about how is your home office or space set up to actually accommodate for it. So let's see if it's too loud.
All right, welcome to class, everybody. It looks like it might be a little wet outside today. It's been raining, so hopefully you'll be staying dry. what I would like for you each to do is to grab out your books. We're going to turn to page 45. Go to section 2. We left off yesterday. We're working on equations. If you like.
So for me, this video was a really big moment because I was like, this is exactly how I sometimes struggle to process things, and I couldn't understand how other people aren't affected like this. So I hope it also gives you an idea of what it can be like to experience these things. Another challenge that often comes up for people with neurodivergence is something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. First, I want to say rejection sucks for everyone. It registered as an emotion on the pain scale. When people feel rejected, they experience something, it activates the same part of the brain as pain does. So we are hardwired to not like rejection, but often people with neurodivergence, whether that is inherent to neurodivergence or just to the experience of growing up like that, often react more strongly to rejection or failure, and sometimes even just perceived rejection. So sometimes people get told they're too sensitive because they're always like, oh, I'm being excluded from this thing, but to them it feels very real. So it's very helpful to know that that affects people with neurodivergence a lot more than it might others, and it can also show up in different ways. Some people start to feel very depressed or sad, whereas other people also might just get very angry and reactive and come across as like very emotional. So if you find yourself affected by RSD or rejection-sensitive dysphoria, there are some ways to deal with it. The first one is try to delay any reaction to the difficult situation until you've bought yourself some time to digest it. Sometimes we want to react right away. I learned to just, okay, I'm feeling really stressed right now. I need a minute to myself, if you can. And what is helpful is going to be different for everyone. Some people find cognitive behavioral therapy quite helpful, short CBT, and some exercises on how to work through these thoughts. I really like self-compassion exercises, which helps you be more compassionate towards yourself and normalizing your experience. And I have some worksheets for that later in the slides. Or you can come up to a stall that I have outside the library to have a chat about that. And as an ally as well, if you want to support someone who is quite sensitive to rejection, also think about how am I actually accounting for that when I have to give them feedback, for example. And another challenge is going to be done by Errol.
Okay. So a challenge I often see neurodivergent people encounter is the issue of self-esteem and confidence. So I'm not going to make you raise your hands again, don't worry. But how many times have people here heard words like, sorry, this blog sucks, I'm dyslexic, or, oh, I probably forgot, it's my ADHD brain. And saying these things are all fun and games, but they do have an impact on neurodivergent people all the time. And the messaging around neurodiversity overwhelmingly focuses on what we can't do. It's very easy to forget that we are whole people with talents and skills that have nothing to do with our disabilities. And so one of the things that I like to do to kind of help with this challenge is to sit and define what I'm actually challenged by when I have ADHD. And it's not necessarily the entire symptom list. There are specific things that I struggle with to a greater or lesser extent. And that's a really valuable exercise for fully understanding your own strengths as a person.
Okay, so we mostly try to address people here directly who have that experience, but we also want to summarize it for you if you are a friend of someone or work with someone. So what you can do to help people be more at peace and at home in the workplace is, first of all, your communication is a big part. So if you have to give feedback, prepare it a bit. Think about like, how can that land with people, or how can I invite them to ask me for clarification if they don't understand or I'm concerned they're taking it the wrong way. Helping people to recognize their strengths, like we just said, and figuring out what they're actually good at and building on that is a lot easier than just constantly focusing on overcoming difficulties with them. One of my favorite points is always be clear about the what and when and the why. The why is a big one for me. Sometimes people are labeled as quarrelsome when they ask about, oh, why do I need to do that? But as a neurodivergent person, knowing why I'm doing a task makes it much easier for me to do the task right, do it effectively, and understand the context why I'm delivering it. I'm not trying to be critical of whether it's necessary. It just helps me get context. So if you can tell people why they're doing a specific thing, that's gold stars for you. One really nice tool that you can use is something called a manual of me. And again, that's very helpful for anyone, not just neurodivergent people. It's on a website called Manual of Me. We have links at the end as well, and the slides will be available to you, so you can also find it. You don't have to worry about writing it down. It's a website where you can just write, this is how I work the best. This is what I look like when I'm at my best. These things are difficult for me, and this is how you can help me. There's lots of things you can put in there. And if you did something like that with your whole team, so you know, hey, this person likes feedback written. This person really likes you talking to them about feedback, so they feel more at ease. That's a really great tool. So generally a big recommendation for that. And another thing is thinking about how to make your workplace or environment sensory friendly. Can I open a dialogue, or are there any noisy settings or bright lights? If I have a meeting with someone, can we go to somewhere more quiet or calm and not do it in the cafeteria with 500 people walking around and talking and drinking and slurping and making terrible sounds? Which is I'm very passionate about sounds that disrupt you, if you hadn't noticed. Yeah, or ask about feedback, let people tell you what is helpful and what isn't, and also allow them to make modifications and take sensory breaks maybe, if that would be helpful for them. So hopefully these takeaways help you. And again, we just want to reiterate that this is always helpful. If you write more written documentation, that will help everyone in your team, not just a neurodivergent person. So accommodations aren't always just, oh, I'm asking for help for myself because I'm struggling. By asking for these things, you usually make processes better for everyone. So it's a really valid thing to do. Next, I'm going to specifically talk about ADHD and how to deal with tasks, just because I have ADHD, Errol has ADHD, this is our specialty, so I thought I'd put some of that in as well, because there's some very specific challenges I found that are helpful to understand. So the ADHD peeps here, take notes. I don't know if anyone can relate, but this person is me. Pretty much every other day nowadays. I've gotten better, it's not every day anymore. But if you can relate to this, welcome to the club. One thing I found really frustrating about ADHD and also helpful to understand is that traditional advice often just doesn't work for us. And I became a productivity guru because I tried to figure out, like, how can I finally get myself to do the things? And I followed all the methods, and sometimes they didn't work for me. So Eat the Frog is a method that productivity gurus love. They're like, just do the most difficult thing first in the day. That doesn't work if your system doesn't have any dopamine in it at the morning. So I need to build up my dopamine. If I try to do the difficult task first in the morning, I'll just sit there and I'll stare at the task, and 3 hours will pass and nothing will have happened. So what I do instead is I do the fun thing first and the things that get me into a work mode, and then I can do it. Maybe it works for you, but it didn't work for me. Pomodoro method. That's a method where you set a timer for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break, then you do 25 minutes work and take a 25-minute break. That worked well for me for a while, and I was like, I finally found it. And then it stopped working. The reason why that happened is I really struggle with task switching and task initiation. Starting a task, once I'm in it, I want to stay with it as long as I can, and then my brain is happy, and that's good. And stopping myself forcibly actually makes it harder for me. The reason why it worked for a while is because it was new and shiny, and that made it work, and that's also why it stopped working. Make a list. Anyone here with ADHD that ever got told to make a list to solve all your problems? Yes, if only we got money for that, because we'd be rich. So making a list doesn't help you if you forget the list exists, or the list then becomes overwhelming, so you don't want to do anything. So if it doesn't work for you, don't worry, that's fine. And sometimes we might also tend to want to tell people, well, just do it. We try to say that to make them feel like, oh, it's not such a big deal. The problem with this advice of trying to be encouraging, say, well, just do it, it's not hard, is we know it's not hard. I know it's not hard, and yet right now I can't make my brain do it. And the more I'm getting told I can't do an easy thing, the more my confidence crumbles, the more I'm ashamed, because I know I can write this email in 5 minutes probably, but right now it feels impossible. So by trying to show someone how easy a task is, you're not always helping them. You actually make them feel more ashamed or stressed than they already are. So here's why some traditional advice doesn't work. So what can you do instead that helps? I found it super helpful to understand something called the theory of the interest-based nervous system. Research ongoing, not sure if it's the solution, but it helped me with a lot of tasks. So most people's brains can look at something and go like, what's the most important thing to do? What's the highest priority? My brain doesn't do it. My brain likes things when they're either new, it's exciting and shiny, like the Pomodoro method at the start, so I can do it. Or it's interesting, it's connected to one of the interests I have. For me, that's, for example, psychology or games. I can always learn about that. So if a task is related to that, I'll probably do it. I'll probably do too much of it. Some people like also having a challenge. So if you try to get me to clean up my room, nah. If you see how much of my room can I clean up in 10 minutes, I'll be like, ooh, challenge, fun, it's a game now. So sometimes that aspect can help us. Some people like competition with other people, others just like to compete with themselves or having a playful thing. And the last motivator that we usually have and that we over-rely on is extreme urgency. We can't do the thing until the deadline is this close to happening, and then we finally like, well, I can't delay it any longer, I have to do it now. And the problem is often we just rely on this and not the other factors, and that means we are more prone to burnout. So if you look at a task and it has none of these things, first of all, it's really fine to say, well, it's neither novel, nor interesting, nor challenging, nor is it urgent. This is gonna suck for me in my brain. And even just saying that sometimes helped me be like, okay, it's just not gonna be fun. And sometimes I then also ask myself, how can I add one of these things? If I have to do my taxes, well, maybe can I make it fun somehow? I don't know. Can I make it more urgent? So the Anti-Planner by Danny Donovan is a nice tool, or you can try other things. Try weird things, try things that are fun and work for you. Some people really like to do body doubling, where they have someone else in the room that's also working on a task, because then my brain goes like, oh, they're working, I should be working, okay, I'm gonna do this. Or adding fun, like tossing a coin, setting yourself a timer, or do it in the tub. Like do your taxes in the bathtub, because your brain will be like, ooh, I'm sitting in the bathtub with my laptop, this is fun. I can do the taxes now because I'm having fun. So try out what works for you. It can be weird, and that's fine too. And some people also like to build rituals. I have heard of people who have like their getting shit done hoodie. They only put the hoodie on when they have to do the really difficult thing, and after a while they associate the hoodie with being able to do the difficult stuff. So whatever works for you, experiment, have fun, and yeah, have a go at whatever works for you. And to round it up, once again, we don't just procrastinate things we don't want to do. We also will sometimes procrastinate things we do want to do, and that's a thing that is annoying about ADHD, but also understanding this hopefully helps you. And now if you want to help someone, if you're not affected by this, but you want to help someone with ADHD, instead of giving them advice and saying, it's easy, and make them feel ashamed, or do it whenever, and then you take away their urgency, and suddenly their brain goes like, oh, whenever, that's great. I was told today I can come here whenever. I was like, oh no, don't say that. I'm just going to show up and have to do my talk. So instead of saying all these things, ask, how can I help? What does support look like for you? And then do that. And yeah, check in for yourself as well. Do your tools and systems that you have set up work, or are they getting in the way? So I've done a lot of blabbing, so I hand back over to the lovely Errol for the next segment.
Thank you. That was excellent. So now we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, employment rights. You have rights. You have the right to receive support for your disability in the workplace. So first of all, you have the Equality Act. Your employer cannot discriminate against you because you have a disability. And this applies even if you aren't diagnosed, because the mere perception of you having a disability and them discriminating against you because of that is against the Equality Act. There's also rules about reasonable adjustments they can make in the office for you, and that could include things like flexible working or even working from home. And finally, you have Access to Work, which is a publicly funded program, and it covers all kinds of different things. So it could cover like a digital notepad so you can take notes in meetings more easily, or headphones so you can concentrate better in the office. It can include subtitles or transcription software. Again, I use these to take notes better. And it could include things like stim toys, visual timers, and standing desks, or any other kind of tool you can imagine. I'm going to pass this back to Susie because she's especially knowledgeable about the two other things you can get with access to work.
So another thing that you can ask for from access to work, if you can make a case of how it would help you, is one thing is assistance. So you can ask for different types of support workers. Some people use virtual assistants to help them schedule their workload or just take care of the emails if they find that really overwhelming in some way or form. So they can help you getting very specific bits of your work done for a set amount of hours a week. And there's lots of people who specialize specifically on neurodivergent people. So that's really helpful to know that you can get that paid for. And you can also get coaching, and in some cases also potentially therapy, where a specialized coach or therapist can help you better deal with your neurodivergence. Again, there's very specialized people, there's some more general people. The most important thing is to find someone you get along with and you think you want to work with. That's just a really good advice. And if you have questions about access to work, we can go into that at the end in the FAQ. I'm not a perfect specialist in it, but there's some things I can answer. But it is something you can ask and get financed and tap into. So that's really good to know. Click. And yeah, if you're interested in start a conversation at work, ideally your HR department will know about these things. So you can talk to your manager or to HR or whoever feels most trustworthy or supportive. If you also want, you can maybe ask a friend or co-worker to have that conversation as support with you if you don't feel comfortable having it alone, but just reach out and ask for the help and how to access it. So we talked a lot about challenges and depressing stuff, which is obviously understandable because it comes up for a lot of people, but we also wanted to talk a bit more about like how do you start to thrive in the games community, whether you're a player or someone working in games. And at this point, it's important to talk about masking, which you might have heard as a term. Basically, to mask just means when you put all these techniques into place that you have learned to come across as normal or neurotypical. So when you're really disorganized and you use 10 calendars to keep on track and you're always still on time and people are like, oh, she's so organized, she's on time. That's sometimes you may be putting on the mask, but it may often be taxing. And to refuse to mask and perform this neurotypically can be a really important bit of, showing love for yourself and being more you. Masking has a high cost, even though it helps us succeed and sometimes find connections, because it can put us into distress. Sometimes it takes up a lot of our energy, and then when we come home, we're like, I'm dead now, I can't do anything else. Or it's very exhausting and draining. You might also feel disconnected. You feel like you're constantly being someone else for other people, and that might mean after a while, you don't even know who you are anymore yourself. And that then might affect your confidence because you're like, well, I have to do all these things to function and to be liked and to come across as something else. And then you feel like an imposter because you've been acting. So masking has a massive drain on your emotional and physical energy. And that is an important cost to talk about. And people sometimes don't know, especially when you're getting diagnosed. I got late diagnosed and I was like, what do I even look like when I'm unmasking? I don't know. And it's going to be different for everyone. For some people, it might mean they just don't hold back their enthusiasm so much. Like my voice goes up when I get really excited, and people find that very annoying. But when I'm unmasking, I'm with my friends, and I know they will be accepting, then I'll just go, "Way, this is really cool. Let me tell you about this thing." And I'm like, "Oh, this is intense." But that's what it can look like. Some people just love to info dump. They don't like to talk about small talk and how the weather is. They want to tell you for 10 hours why Destiny is the best game or whatever else is their thing. And just sharing that without constantly censoring yourself and moderating. Am I talking too much? Is the other person still, happy? That can be a sign that they're just actually comfortable around you. Some people will stop trying to constantly smile and manage their eye contact. They might just look away and look a bit, I don't know, less engaged, even though internally they are, and it's enough reassurance to just know they're listening. That's just them being relaxed. So it can be lots of different things and different for everyone. So just over time, you'll just find what works for you and what feels right. And actually, you should be quite honored if someone is doing this around you. Obviously, sometimes it might clash with neurodivergences, if I get really loud and I talk to someone who has sensory issues with volume, we'll probably have to find a compromise. But yeah, it's important to know that it can look like different for everyone. And that's why it's so important also to find people that you get along with and that get that and get you, and not just work with neurotypical people. Do you want to do this bit?
Just do a little impression. It's very cute. So how do we channel the energy of this adorable little rodent and find our people? You are going to want your phones out for this bit. There's a lot of information in a short space of time, and you might find it helpful to take pictures. So we've taken the liberty of putting together a list of resources about different communities, online and offline, sort of, that you can go and find out and make friends. So first up, we have Autistica Play, we have the Neurodivergent Game Dev Collective, and we have Playing Attention, which hosts monthly, sorry, I don't know why I'm trying to read from this, I have notes, which has monthly lunches for people specifically with ADHD, and they're run by the fantastic Susi. Yes. So go along and you can hang out with Susi some more.
And they're online, so you can access them from anywhere.
There you go. Alternatively, there are some broader communities you might want to get involved with online, including the UK Games Industry Slack, which you have to already be working in games to apply for, unfortunately. There's the SafePoint Industry Gathering, which is open to all underrepresented genders. There's the Code Coven, again, for underrepresented genders. There's Outmaking Games, which is for queer people. There's Women in Games, which is for anyone who identifies as a woman. And there's Safe Now World, who are a mental health charity who do some fantastic work in the gaming sphere. Everyone got their pictures? All right. And then, of course, we couldn't let this pass without shouting out our friendly local Norfolk game dev group. It's a wonderful place to make other game devs. We have monthly meetings where you can also go along and play some fantastic games in progress or show off ones you've made yourself. Highly recommend it. If you have favorite communities of your own, me and Susi would love to hear about them after the talk or in the Q&A portion. But the thing is, while we're on the subject of big social events with lots of people, I think it's important to recognize that that's not for everyone. A lot of neurodiverse people really struggle with these kinds of networking things. And as an event organizer, there are some things you can do to make that space a little bit more friendly and a little bit more welcoming. We have another slide about it. So how many times have people been to a networking event only to find out that it turns out to be a booze up in the noisiest bar imaginable? It's a total nightmare, right? And it's a total nightmare even for neurotypical people. And if you have any kind of sensory difficulty, like in the video Susi showed earlier, it's even worse, and it's totally unnecessary. So if anyone is thinking of organizing an event, this is my plea to you. Stop, think, does there have to be alcohol? Can people have a normal conversation without wearing their voices out, like I've just done? And if you're a manager and this is a work event, is it mandatory, or are people allowed to stay home? Because some people will want to. And there are various other ways as a manager that you can adapt the way you handle events and how you handle speaking to people in general. You can adapt your communication style to be more friendly to neurodiverse employees. Be direct about what it is that you want. Ask how people like to receive feedback. Don't make assumptions again. And just embrace the difference in other people's communication styles, because the one thing everyone can do to support the neurodiverse people in their lives and yourselves is to be yourself and accept other people being themselves. Oh, it's me again, isn't it?
Yeah, go on.
All right. So in this last section, we want to address one of the biggest challenges in the workplace, which is the dreaded burnout. And put quite simply, Burnout is what happens when your work life looks less like that and more like this. So burnout scholar Christina Maslach has identified 6 common causes of burnout in the workplace. When there are problems with any of these, we start to see problems in people's minds. So when there are issues with the workplace community, how fair the work feels, how much work people are actually doing, how much control they have over that work and how they're rewarded for that work, or if there's a mismatch between their values and the values of the company. When there are problems in any of these areas, burnout is sure to follow. I'll hand you back to Susi for some strategies to coping with it.
Yeah, and that's important that these are the general criteria for everyone, so that affects everyone equally and is the main points, but we wanted to specifically also talk about why with neurodivergent people you might need to put some extra care. So first of all, what does burnout look like? I sadly had to go through this myself to figure it out. I wouldn't recommend it if you can avoid it, but it is usually a thing that sets in quite gradually after a prolonged amount of stress, and you're starting to feel constantly drained. You might start to also feel a bit helpless or trapped or feeling some sense of hopelessness. For me, a big red flag, because I didn't notice the drain because I was always putting myself under a lot of stress and all these things. I was like, oh, that's normal, I'm just exhausted. But what for me was one of the biggest red flags was that my attitude started to drastically change. I'm usually quite an optimistic and positive person, and I became so cynical. I was like, God, no one cares, everyone sucks, everything sucks. And it took me quite a while to actually catch myself and be like, is this me? Is this how I am? Or is this actually just me being really exhausted and stressed? And with that often comes feelings of detachment or loneliness. No one gets that you are like this. Especially for people with neurodivergence, the heightened emotional response might be affected. That suddenly I came out of meetings and I just started crying. I was like, that's weird, nothing bad happened, why am I crying? So I was also a lot more emotional than I usually was, and for me that was a warning sign. And some people might also be more irritable about sounds, about other things. And autistic people often report as well that their sensitivity to whatever they're generally already sensitive increases, like lights are even worse for me or temperature is even worse. So usually you notice these changes quite slowly and subtly, but if you notice several of them, do check in with yourself. And the reason why we're mentioning burnout specifically, even though the slides before are factors for everyone, is that as neurodivergent people, we have some extra risk factors that are more likely to cause burnout or lead to burnout, even when things in the workplace are okay, and even worse if they're not okay. Because we, like we said, we have to sometimes mask, or we think we have to, which then means that's draining. We have the expectations of our surroundings to function in a certain way, in a certain day rhythm or whatever, which is draining. We might sometimes have started to tear down our boundaries because we were always told, well, you're not doing this well enough. So we're like, okay, if I just say yes to everything, people will be happy. Or if I just spend 5 hours making this perfect, then no one can criticize me. So I'm just going to make everything perfect and burn myself out. For people with ADHD, it can sometimes also be that our brain just craved dopamine. For me, that was a big thing because I didn't know I had ADHD. And I was just taking on project after project after project because my brain was like, ooh, new thing, new thing, new thing. And then I was the person with 40 jobs and no support, and that was not good. And for people with autism, oftentimes of transitions can be very hard if there's a substantial change in your home dynamic, in your environment, whether you're moving places or cities, or your manager changes, or your team changes, or your work changes. That can often be a lot of mental load because people with autism find it often quite good to have routines or environment they're comfortable with, and that can be a big factor that can contribute to it. So it's just really good to be aware we have those extra risks. So again, lots of sad things. So what do you do to help yourself? First of all, acceptance is really helpful. Accepting yourself as you are and seeking support that really helps you is a really good first step. Using internal support if you are working can be good. Sometimes that might be your manager, if you like and trust them. That might be HR, if you like and trust them. That might be an employee resource program. Some people have insurances where you say you can talk to a mental health specialist, or we have mental health first aiders is something we had at the workplace before. So figure out, is there any resources that can help me with this? you might want to make some space and time where you can just be yourself and unmask, because if you're doing this all day at work and you're not being yourself because you don't feel comfortable to do so yet, find some time where you can make up for it. Learning to understand how your brain works and what you need is really good, because then also you can learn to speak up and make demands so you're less strained. And another point I find really helpful to point out is like there's different forms of rest, and that can be really helpful to understand, because when I was really stressed, people often told me, oh, just take a bath. And my brain was like, God, it's the most boring thing in the world. I don't want to take a bath. Even the thought made me stressed. So for me, actually, rest might look like just not thinking about work and doing something creative or something I'm bad at, or maybe meeting up with people and friends and just chatting about something that's not work related. So some people actually find it important to make space for their spirituality or whatever helps them recharge, or sensory rest. Some people also just need to spend a few minutes or hours in a quiet, dark room where there's no sound or no light or whatever to just calm down. So also figure out what kind of rest am I needing, and it's not always the sort of physical rest lying in a bathtub doing nothing. We're going to summarize, and afterwards we're going to have a little Q&A. So because we talked a lot and I talk fast, which I apologize for, but I'm sure since you're neurodivergent, hopefully some of you actually find that helpful. So what we want you to take away is lots of neurodivergent people are in the game space. So it's a welcoming space, and our strengths can match this really well. So if you figure out your strength and figure out how that matches in the workplace, you're gonna find a place here, hopefully.
And one of the great things about it is that if we get support from others and from ourselves, our amazing brain can do great things.
Communities are really important, and people who get you, so you can either try to find them, or if they're not there, create and start putting together a group of people that get you and that you trust. I started a lot of accidental movements and groups, and it's been actually really helpful for me. Accidentally.
It's been helpful for a lot of other people.
So if there's nothing there that you like, build it yourself, unless you burn out.
And as allies, because we're not just all neurodivergent people, we're also allies to other neurodivergent people in our lives. One of the best things we can do is to tame our advice monster and turn on our curiosity and listen to what people have to say about the way their brains work.
Also, like Errol already said, helpful to remember you have rights. Look up the Equality Act if you're feeling treated unfairly. Look up reasonable adjustments, and if a manager says, oh, that doesn't seem like a thing I would do for other people, you can also get support to help you point it. The law says you have to. Do you want to talk to HR about this? And sometimes people will change the tune. So remember your rights, and it's valid to ask for them.
And last of all, we are extra prone to burnout. So make sure we all take care of ourselves so that we can shine brighter for longer.
Okay. And yeah, that was the main bit of the talk. We kept it a bit shorter and removed some things so we have time to ask, because you can I could have put a million more slides in here. So what we did instead, we thought we'd give you some time to ask your questions if there's anything you want to know about. And you can also either come up later to get some worksheets, or you can use the QR code to hopefully access a Google folder where all these things are. I haven't tested this. I should have tested this.
This could take you anywhere.
It works. Okay, thank you.
You're wise.
Yeah, live QA testing.